Hello and welcome to BOOTHCAST. On BOOTHCAST, I speak to people about sport, business, and the winning mindset. Today's guest is Nick Rosato from the Raw Group. Now, Nick is going to tell us his story going from 8 years in the police force to now moving into the restaurant and venues industry. He's been very, very successful. He's got 16 venues across the eastern states now. And I'm really interested to hear about his journey and how he sort of formed his path throughout the past few years. So, Nick, thank you so much for coming on.
Hi, Boothie, a pleasure.
That's good, mate. So I guess with all my guests, I like to start out from the beginning. So where are you from, and where'd you go to school, and all that good stuff?
Yeah, well, I'm born and bred a Brisbane boy. Went to school in Brisbane, grew up in Brisbane. So did everything there and left school. And when I left school, I joined the police force, which was straight out of school. It was a bit of a culture shock. My parents thought I did okay at school. I could have gone on and done some courses afterwards, but I decided that wasn't for me. And I joined the police force, and I did 9 months at the academy. And after 9 months at the academy, I left the academy and got transferred to Charters Towers. And Charters Towers is a small town. If you hit Townsville and turn left, it's on the way to Mount Isa. And that, for a Brisbane boy who hadn't been past Noosa, was a very big shock.
Yeah.
But it taught me how to talk to people. Because out west, there's not, we were a small station of 20 men. And when you worked, sometimes you worked alone. So you either had to put up or talk your way out of things. And I like the talking side.
Yeah.
So, that was a very interesting part of my, first couple of years in the workforce.
So for you, were you going to school, were you a private school, were you a public school? Were you can I ask if you were like a middle class family, a lower income family? Like sort of where did you start?
Well, I went to a boys' college in Brisbane called Villanova. And my family were my dad was a builder. So I wouldn't say, we weren't by no means poor, and my dad was successful, but not of huge success. He worked very, very hard. So I think we were middle of the road. I mean, as children, we never wanted for anything, so we were very lucky in that. My father did well, and probably not understanding the finances back then, but we always had choices of schools and sports and things like that. So we didn't really want for too much. I was very lucky. My dad was an Italian immigrant who came to Australia 50 years ago and became basically one of the original property developers. There's a block of units in a suburb up here on the south side of Brisbane and Coorparoo that I reckon every street in that suburb, Dad built a block of units.
Yeah.
And I worked on those job sites as a young child, cleaning up, doing all the bits and pieces. That's just the way life was.
Yeah. And what was your first job?
Our first job when I left school was straight into the police force.
Yeah. Oh, so you left at 17, 18 and straight into the academy.
Finished senior and went straight to the academy. I mean,
and what was it? And what was it about the police over sort of university and that type of pathway? Like, were you really smart at school, or it just wasn't for you? Like, what was the decision there?
Look, I was an average student, but I can remember my report cards used to always say, Nick loves school, but could just do way better. So my teachers always thought that, and I did. I really enjoyed school. I enjoyed the academic side to a degree. I enjoyed the social side, and I really enjoyed the sports side. So it wasn't that I was doing poorly, but it wasn't a motivating factor for me at that stage.
And did you love sport? Like, I know you got kids in surf lifesaving. That's how we met, through sort of being at B&B Northcliffe Surf Club for a long time. But did you love sport going through high school and that type of thing, or was it always second fiddle?
Yeah, no, sport was a big part of my life, especially when you go to a boys' school. There's a very big emphasis on sport. I was a reasonable swimmer. I played cricket, and I played rugby union at the school. So I made the first 15, which was a big achievement at the time.
Yeah.
Rugby was, it's a very big part of the boys college group in Brisbane. So that was, for me, that was a very big achievement in senior. And then when I left school, and joined the police force, fitness was a very big part. And we played rugby league at the academy. Wayne Bennett and Mal Meninga were our physical directors.
Okay,
so
cool.
We had pretty good coaches, and they were in charge of making all the police recruits fit, and they did a very good job. We were very fit.
I bet you were.
But that was all part of it, and I played rugby league at Charters Towers too. That was very much encouraged by the officer in charge to get involved with the community, which I did.
So with Mal Meninga and Wayne Bennett being involved at the academy, was this pre sort of their rugby league careers, or was it around the same time, or how did that sort of phase in?
Well, they were just starting off, really. Wayne Bennett was the head coach of a suburban club in Brisbane, Souths, and Mal Meninga was basically, he was a policeman too. They're both police officers. He just finished at the academy, and he'd gone with Wayne to start playing his career. So his job, when he never actually went and served too many days on the beat, Big Mal. I think he went straight to the academy, and he was one of the physical instructors there.
Yeah.
So we're talking early days for those two.
So what year was this?
We're talking, let me think. I went to the academy in 1983.
Yep.
And so we're talking a long time ago.
Yeah, a few years ago. So what's that? 37 years ago. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I guess going through the academy, what were the sort of like the key things that were drilled into you at the academy? Is it military style, or is it more sort of defense, or how does it all work through when you're going through the academy with police?
There was a lot of law to learn. So, we really did study pretty hard, because understanding the laws, understanding the powers we had, understanding, in order to make an arrest and then have that arrest stand up in court, there was a lot to know. We did, the study was very full on while we were there, but that was intertwined with the physical side, weapons training, how to drive the vehicle under, speed and hazards and things like that. So all that was sort of incorporated together, but there was a heavy emphasis on the study, because if you didn't pass, you got kicked out. There was no not passing, and passing wasn't 50%. Passing was 70%.
Yeah,
so
right.
So they kept a high standard.
So being a student that, as you said, that was sort of a bit average, didn't really enjoy school, didn't really pursue the academics, I guess, as much as you would. Did you feel like you were a bit robbed when you get into the police force? It was heavily focused on the law, and you had to do a lot of study.
Well, it was funny, really, because I think I was always competitive. So I wanted to keep up with everybody. So the study just became a part and parcel. And I was only 19 at the time. So I was like one of the very youngest recruits. I was in a squad with guys that were probably 19 to 35. So for some of these guys, this was going to be their career till they retired. They'd already had probably 15 years of being in the workforce. I mean, they were plumbers, electricians, lawyers. There was a vast majority of where they came from pre the academy. I mean, I'd come straight from school, 0 life lessons.
Yeah. So coming straight from school, was it always you always wanted to be in the police force, or was there other decision you were trying to make at the time? Like you said, you were working with your dad a little bit, and maybe there was other opportunities at that point. Why the police force?
Well, I think I never grew up wanting to be a policeman, but I think because I worked on those job sites with my dad at an age that I can't even remember how far back, it wasn't something I thought I wanted to do straight away. It was part of my life so much, and I think I saw just how hard my father worked, and I thought it might be an easier way to earn a living here.
Yeah.
In retrospect, it probably would have been a good line, to understand, a good business line, because if you could have grasped the property, the way my father did back then, you could have really kicked on. But, the opportunities come and go, and, in life, you head down one road and then all of a sudden there's a fork, and you pick the fork and it takes you to a different direction.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So you just ended up in the police force and you want to try and make it work. And so how after you went through the academy, what was it like being out in that town near Mount Isa and you sort of learn how to talk to people? But was there a lot of crime going on when you're out there?
Well, the Charles is about a population of about 25,000 people, 25,000,
Okay.
a large Indigenous population. Probably half the population were Indigenous, and a very big. They're all rural farmers out there, cattlemen basically. So there wasn't so much huge, serious crimes like murders and rapes and things like that. There was a lot of domestic violence, drunkenness, fights, that sort of thing. I mean, from both sides. I mean, the boys that work on the stations all week would come to town on the weekend and they would enjoy themselves. And these were big, strong, tough men.
Yeah.
So that's why you had to learn to talk to people
Yeah.
because they were all bigger than me.
Yeah. Trying to
And
take them on might be a bit tough.
well, I mean, without backup, in the city, you could jump on the radio and say, I need urgent assistance, and 10 cars would turn up. You do that in Charters Towers, and there's no one at the other end. So you just have to learn to know your limitations. But in saying that, I got to know the people really well. I played rugby league in the town, and I played first grade and second grade there, and the team was probably half and half of Indigenous players and white boys, and so we actually got on quite well.
Yeah.
So if I would end up in a situation with any of that crew, well, I knew them. So
Yeah.
it was a very good chance that I could, de-escalate the situation before it became. But I learned a lot there. And when I tell this story, my kids have heard it 100 times. But when I first got to Charters Towers, I was 19. So when I left the academy, I had handcuff and gun and baton and the whole box and dice. And I remember turning up to the station and the senior sergeant who was in charge of the station, I remember his name, John Milner. He got me into his office. He said, "Oh, well, welcome, young fella. You're a city boy, they tell me." And I said, "Yes, senior. Born and bred in Brisbane. I haven't been out this way before." He said, "That's no problem. We'll teach
Yeah.
you a lot." He said, "Now,
Yeah.
what did they give you when you got here?" I said, "Oh, handcuffs and, my baton and my gun." He said, "They give you a gun? Let me have a look." So he got my firearm and he looked at it, and it's a stock standard weapon that all police had. And he then turned around and opened this ginormous safe and he put my firearm in there and he closed it and locked it. And he said, "When I know you're not going to shoot any of the locals, I'll give it back to you."
Yeah.
And that painted the picture of working in a small town.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, I was devastated at the time because I'd worked hard.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, if my children, my son is 21, giving 19-year-olds guns, not a great thing.
Yeah. Do they still do
So
that? Do they still get a gun out straight out of the academy?
you can't, 19 is no longer the age now. You have to go to
Okay.
university now and do a 2-year course before you get to the academy.
Yeah. Right.
So it's not about, we had the express route. There is no
Yeah.
express route anymore.
Yeah. They might have come unstuck a couple of times and then realized that probably wasn't the best idea.
I think so. And I think also too, back then there were height and all those sort of restrictions in, which obviously these days were just, discriminatory.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen anymore. So things were very different.
Yeah, I bet. So how long were you out in the station that you're in?
I was at Charters Towers for probably about 2.5 years. Then got transferred to Townsville after that time for only about 18 months. And then I was given the choice then because I'd done country service and I wasn't from the country. When my review came up, they said, "Well, if you can go anywhere in the state now because you've done your country service." And I said, "Oh, that's interesting. Well, I'd like to go to the Gold Coast."
Yeah.
And they sent me to the Gold Coast. And I finished my last 4 years on the Gold Coast, 2 years in uniform, and I finished 2 years in the CIB, in the Criminal Investigation Branch, as a plainclothes detective.
And how did you enjoy being a detective, I guess, than being on the beat and trying, I guess, were you working your way up? Is detective sort of higher than where you would have started?
Yeah, don't know so much about that, because everybody chooses. You can choose a different path. Whether how you get there and how long it takes you to get there is another issue. But oh look, you asked what was the crime like in Charters Towers. Well, the crime on the Gold Coast was rampant.
Yeah.
And we investigated many murders and many rapes and arsons and this very serious crimes, and some to this day are just plain in my memory of what we did. And so that was a very, I was still only young then, early 20s, so it was not confronting, but I found it interesting. And we worked really hard in those days.
What was it like dealing with that type of thing as like an individual, and sort of like emotionally, like sort of having to deal with rapes and murders and their families and those type of things? Is that something that you ever get used to, or is it something that you start a process to deal with those type of things? Because as a young 20-year-old, it's obviously a lot to deal with.
It is, but the police force become this, for want of a better term, that family who they deal with terrible situations all the time. Men and women in uniform, men and women in plain clothes. I mean, to go to someone's home and knock on their door and tell them that one of their children has passed away in a traffic accident, those things stay with you for a little bit because of the reaction, obviously, of the parents.
Yeah.
And no parent wants to open the door to a police officer at 2:00 in the morning, because no news. That's never going to be good. So, those sort of things were difficult, but we dealt with them through talking to each other. The police have a very dark sense of humor, and I think that dark sense of humor, and that humor is contained within police, was how it was dealt with.
Yeah.
And we supported each other. And,
I guess that's the best way you got to do it when you're sort of dealing with those type of things and confronting it as a young man. I guess it would have just been so full on all the time, and I guess you'd never want to be in that situation. But that's a situation you put in, you have to deal with it, and that's your job. So, but I guess for me, what was probably like the best thing that you learned from being in the police force that maybe that you use now that you're in the private sector?
Oh, look, it's a good question, and like I think I said, Charters Towers experience, and also my experience of being around with a lot of a high range of people from young to older. Through I work with some police officers. By the time I'd met them, they had 30 odd years experience. So working with some of these sort of people gave you, they were giving me life lessons as much as I probably didn't realize at the time. They really were. I think dealing with the public in general, I mean, being able to talk to people, most times you only need a police officer if there's a problem, and if there's a problem, it's either someone's committed an offence against you, or you have committed an offence.
Yeah.
So it's always probably never in a good situation. It's not socially. But I think on those tricky ones where you would go to a domestic, dispute, or you would go to a serious traffic accident, or a shoplifting, whatever it was, you just learnt to deal with people and understand their emotions, and then I think that helped me later on in life when I was in business, talking to people who were probably older than me and more experienced. I didn't feel so intimidated by people in business.
Yep.
I think that those were some of the things I really took out.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess that's why I always like to draw parallels between sport and business, because the people that I get to hang out with or meet on a start line, like you never really know who they are, and you start speaking to them, and you start to work out who they are and what they do, and you learn so much from them. But you wouldn't learn anything, I guess, if you're just hanging around people your age. So I think it is always cool to talk to older people and more experienced people. But coming back to, I guess, what you were saying about how good it was to learn how to speak to people, and that's probably like the best thing that you learned through being in the police. What was probably the worst thing, or the thing you didn't like as much, or the thing you could have done without, I guess, when being in the police force? If I can ask that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm very open about it, and I've had these long conversations with the kids. They always inquisitive and want to know what was what were the things that were bad. And look, there were some trying moments. I mean, when I was 19 in Charters Towers, I was the junior officer at the station, so I got every post-mortem. So a police officer has to be present during a post-mortem when a doctor performs a post-mortem in case there are, signs of a criminal activity. So I got every post-mortem. Now, most people would say that is unbelievable, but the doctor who I did them with, I totally and absolutely enjoyed them. The thing about it was, the reason I probably got them was because I didn't know anyone in the town.
Yeah.
So no one we were performing the post-mortems on I knew. Yeah. So that was part of it. So that was a bit dark and a bit strange. But again, I think those domestic violence calls when, back in those days, we didn't have the powers they have today. They were tough because there were situations where it was clear that, the male in the household needed to be taken away from that household. But, there were situations where the females were just too scared to make a complaint because of the repercussions after we left. So, they were tough and trying, and things you don't miss, but it was all part of the job.
Yeah. Yeah, and you actually just got to take it for what it is. There's going to be good and bad things with all jobs, and I guess it's good. I guess it's good in a way because you sort of learn to deal with that type of dark stuff really well from a young age. So I guess those type of things would still obviously phase you, but you learn how to deal with it a little bit better, and you sort of be able to help those people around you when those type of things happen. But so you're on the Gold Coast after a few years being out rural. How long were you on the Gold Coast for, and when did you make the decision to move away from the police force?
Again, I met my wife on the Gold Coast, and I probably met my wife. I was still in the police force, and it was probably we were together for probably the last 2 years of my police force, and we're now been married 28 years, so still going strong. We left the police force because my wife, and Kylie, my wife hated me being in the police force. She disliked the midnight calls where I'd have to, a car would be sent round because I was in the CIB. There was a murder scene I had to go to or whatever. And, I would obviously have to take my firearm and all my gear home. And she just detested the whole thing about the police force and how dangerous it was and, the situations that potentially I could get in. So she was basically saying, we've got to find you something else to do. Yeah. And it turned out that my father wanted me to come back up to Brisbane and start helping him out with, to take over the company, the building company. So we decided to do that. So I left the police force and went back to Brisbane and started working with my dad initially in the building. And we did a number of projects together and did reasonably well. During that time, my wife was working at a delicatessen, and she was just doing it part-time. And the owners of the delicatessen wanted to get out. And my wife loved this business so much, decided, well, why don't we buy it? And so I went to my father, and my father helped me out, and we bought this business. And then it was obvious after a while, Kylie being in there and running it with staff that, she needed help. So I went in to help her, and that was our first business, a delicatessen.
It says here, Carindale Shopping Centre in 1991.
Correct.
And so was that associated with your father's business at the time, or that was totally separate and then you gradually moved into...
Well, it was totally separate. And what I didn't tell you was that my sister and brother-in-law owned that delicatessen, and they didn't like it at all.
Okay.
So my dad basically came to me and said, son, we're going to buy this because your wife's working there. She's good at it. We're going to let your sister and your brother-in-law, because they were both economists, so they were very smart cookies. We're going to let them leave, and you're going to take it over. And I said, Pops, I know nothing about delicatessens. He said, don't worry, you'll be all right. And it turned out we were all right. We did quite well.
And what I like about that story is you sort of just threw yourself in the deep end. You went, right, I'll work it out. I'll try and do it. And I like that about a lot of people when they sort of say that I learnt on the fly. How important is that in business and in life to sort of throw yourself in the deep end and just learn how to swim?
Well, BT, I think it's very important because, one of the great strengths of, I call ourselves a small business. We're probably not as small as some these days, but is being able to make decisions quickly. I mean, I'm in an industry now in the hotel industry where pubs and that, where majority of pubs in Queensland are owned by Woolworths or previously Coles. So these huge companies, they take, to make a decision for them is like trying to turn the Titanic. It's a slow, and whereas we can be nimble and quick and say, right, okay, we're going to do that, boom, and straight away put things in place to make whatever decision we've decided on a reality in business. I think that was, part and parcel of it. It was obviously another opportunity outside my comfort zone, but because my wife had been there and doing so well, it really probably wasn't that hard. I mean, my father was there too. It was, my father's an Italian man. He's the matriarch of the family, and he said, we're going to do it. We went ahead and did it.
Yeah. And so you were there for 5 years?
Yeah, I think it was about 5 years. But in that time, my brother, who was working with me, who is now my business partner and has been, the advent of coffee shops started. And this is way back before coffee shops were big. We're talking, early 90s now.
Yeah. Well, I was looking at the list here. In '91, you started the delicatessen. So that's when I was born.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. We were well and truly into it, man.
You were. I didn't thought about coffee until about 2010. So there you go.
Well, it's funny. And then, we bought a coffee shop, and Adrian, who was working for me in the deli part time while he was at university studying law and commerce.
Yep.
And he was just working part time, and at the time he was very happy just to do that. And then when this coffee shop opportunity came along, we decided to do the coffee shop. And then he had to go and tell my parents that those 5.5 years of university, we're just going to put them on hold because we're going to go and sell coffee for a living.
Yeah, and how did they go with that? Because I just said your dad's a proud Italian man, sort of matriarch of the family. How did that go down? Because he would be like, I want you to do this.
You know what? He was pretty good. I think it was my mum who was a little bit more disappointed. She was thinking, we're going to have a lawyer in the family.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we've got a barista. So I think that was a bit of a shock. But again, I think my dad liked the fact that he and I were going to go in business together.
Yeah.
And we invited our sister into it too. So there were 3 members of the family going into it. And for my dad, that was like, okay, I'm cool with that in an Italian sort of way.
Yeah, awesome. And then, so as that, you sort of start with the Cafe Bella at Westfield Toombul, sorry.
Toombul.
And then you create the Raw Group then, or is the Raw Group your dad's business?
No. So Raw Group, we're at Cafe Bella at Toombul for a number of years. Yeah. And the third partner of Raw Group, because Raw Group stands for Rosato and Williams. Okay. And Williams is my other partner. Clayton at that time was the centre manager of the Westfield Toombul that we had Cafe Bella in. So we got to know him very well because obviously, you deal with the centre manager within the, when you lease a shop off Westfield. And Clayton was previously used to work for Powers Brewing. And you'll remember Powers Brewing. They were the first sponsor of the Broncos. So
I don't remember that because I was a Newcastle Knights supporter living in Cays Beach, so I would have detested the Broncos.
Yeah, I'm sure you would, but back in the day, Bernie Power, he became a bit of a legend in the beer industry up here. He took on Forex and CUB, and that was unheard of back then. And he sponsored the Broncos, which was huge because when the Broncos came into the competition, they were just massive. So Clayton had worked for Bernie Power and Powers and then moved on to Westfield. And then he was the one who said, you know, boys, we should open something that I know alcohol and you know food. We should do something together.
Yeah.
And we just drank coffee and, you know, and we thought, yeah, one day, who knows?
Yep.
And then the very first beach house site became available at Maroochydore, and we spent probably months building a business plan, understanding the menu, understanding the concept. And the concept was really taking the surf club to the suburbs.
Yep.
That was our concept. And hence Beach House Bar and Grill was born.
So that was your first major establishment. And did you lease that venue to start with?
We did. That was owned by Len Lease at the time, and I still think it is up there on Sunshine Plaza.
Yeah.
And yeah, so those big centres where we've got beach houses in today are all leased.
Yeah.
Our pubs that we own now are all freehold owned by Rural Group.
Yeah. And then, so what were the sort of challenges you had, I guess, at the delicatessen to the cafe and then to starting a bigger pub restaurant? Like, what did you find along that journey, like the different challenges and probably the biggest challenges that you wouldn't have ever foreseen?
Look, I think, you know, you can come up with a menu, you can come up with a drinks list, and you can come up with a fit out and furniture. But until you now have to employ people that are vital, because at the delicatessen, there were two vital people to that business, me and Kylie. There were other people working there, but we could do it all. Well, now I'm into it where I need a head chef and I need a sous chef and I need a cellarman and I need people that I didn't have the experience in to run this business. I didn't have a cooking background. So, I mean, I like to go to restaurants. I like to eat food, but it's a whole different kettle of fish to understand, okay, well, here's a plate of food. What did it cost us to buy? And how much now do we sell that in the marketplace in order to, have people want to buy it? And it's not just what's on the plate. You have to understand, what are my occupancy costs? And occupancy cost, I mean, what's our rent? What's the electricity? What's the telephone? Have we finance? What's our leasing cost? Understanding all these, which we didn't understand back then, we do now, was the difficult part. Because, you can buy a piece of steak in from the butcher for $5, cook it with chips and salad and a sauce and sell it for $15. But what's the true value of what we made on that?
Yeah. Yeah, because you're factoring all those different costs in and you're trying to work out, okay, well, there's all these numbers. Were you always a numbers guy or was there someone else?
Numbers guy? That is Adrian.
Did you become the numbers guy? Oh, Adrian's the numbers guy. Okay.
Adrian, the lawyer and an accountant, but obviously now the numbers I understand. And it's something that, I get involved with a lot. I mean, basically on a Monday, Adrian and the office will produce the numbers for all the venues. Those numbers will be distributed to Clayton and I, and we have an operations manager now and whatnot. And then we'll go through those numbers per venue and see who made money and who didn't make money and why they did or why they didn't, and look at, across the board. And an analysis goes on a weekly basis.
Yeah. So, and then I guess talking about employees, I guess at the delicatessen, there was two of you, it was you and Kylie, mainly focused on running the business. And then at the cafe, you probably started employing general staff. And then now you're obviously at a much bigger scale. How many staff do you have right now? And how important are the employees to your business? And how hard is it to find the right employees?
Well, currently Rural Group employs just over 600 people. How hard is it to find people? Yeah, it's difficult, but our staff are our greatest asset. I can't do anything without my people. And really, I mean, 16 venues, Boothie, that's a great number, but I can't be at them every day or every night. And so I need to ensure that I've given the tools and I have the right people at these venues at any given time to make sure that they're presenting to the customers, the culture that we expect them to give. And, that's the ongoing training, the ongoing support is really important. I mean, I think one of our great strengths as a company is the fact that Adrian looks after all that back of house. Clayton, who lives on the Sunshine Coast, we have a number of assets on the Sunshine Coast. He looks after all those. And I handle the operation side of everything, plus, the building of new venues. All three of us, we're on the lookout for, sites and opportunities. But that is where our great strength lies, in our people. And it's funny because, I tell people that in our office, we have probably 10 people working in the office. And out of that 10, 8 of them started working for us as either a barmaid or as or someone within the organisation that we have brought through. And we've got one young girl who started with us at Cafe Bella. She's 17. She's now 36, 2 children, married. We've put her through university. She's got her basic commerce degree. I mean, they're the true great stories of Raw Group. When I look at Bianca, the lady I'm talking about, I've seen her grow since she's an 18-year-old kid. I've been to her wedding. She's got children. We helped her with her first house. We put her through university. And all those things were great, but there was some selfishness on our part because she is so good at what she does.
Yeah. And you don't let her go.
And we don't want to let her go. And she doesn't, we've been good to her for a number of years and she wants to stay.
Yeah.
So,
no, I think that's, sorry.
So I was going to say, but they're looking after our people is the most important thing. And look, the hospitality industry, people come and go. But, when people, it's important to us when we employ people that they like us as much as we like them. Because if you don't like who you work for, it's never going to work out. And I always say to people, no one is forced to work for us. This is not, if you don't like what you do, I totally understand it. We just got to make sure and look, we don't get it right all the time. Of course we don't. But I think we've been lucky in most of the times.
Yeah, so your employees are obviously ultra important to your organization, and you want those employees to come in and stay for a long period of time, as I guess they become part of the family with the Raw Group. And I guess now that you're sort of gradually expanding, and as you get more venues, you probably have the opportunity to get more venues, and it gradually sort of branches out more quickly than sort of having the one venue back in 91. How do you find that transition period between sort of having one venue to 2 venues to 3 venues and then getting a team behind you and then expanding? Like, how do you find that process?
It's a bit of a learning on the run process. However, by the time you've got, say 3 venues, the next venue is each additional venue is a little bit easier because you've learned something from the last one. So, we basically now have a setup template. So when we identify a site and obviously the negotiations of that site, whether it be a lease or a freehold or whatever it may be, once we've concluded that to a satisfactory for both parties, the actual setting up of the business and getting it to where we want is probably not the hardest thing for us anymore because we've done it so many times. So I think that part of it now has become easy for us. The hardest part for us these days is finding the right sites.
Yeah. And then for you as well, how hard is it as a sort of I guess not an owner occupier, but like the person who basically runs the business and is the business to stepping away and going, okay, now I want to run a business. And then if I walk away from a business for 3 weeks, is it still going to be successful? Do you feel like you're at that point now where you don't have to micromanage at all? Like you've got a great team, or are you still sort of want to have your hand on the pulse of all the different parts of your business?
No, I think that we've put procedures in place now that we can not so much step away, but if I'm refocused on something, I don't have to be there every minute of the day. I mean, I still contact and speak to every venue manager every week.
Yeah.
Be that Zoom, be that texting, be that a phone call, whatever it may be, we talk. Same with the head chefs. I talk to the head chefs. I've got a group chat with the head chefs, so it's constantly going. So, even at night, I'll sit there and I'll have some ideas that I'll talk to the chefs about. Not all of them will respond at once, but I still have that communication going all the time. It's probably now is easier because I can I have people beside, I've got an operations manager who looks after a lot of the issues that I used to deal with on a day-to-day basis, say back 5-10 years ago. Now I've got other people who can do that. But I personally still like to go to the venues, talk to the people, see how they're going. I think it's important that we get involved in their lives because they're involved in ours. So, how the kids, what's going on, this and that. Because the staff, recently I had one of our staff members lose a very close member in the family, a child. Well, that was traumatic. So we were able to go and give that person time off and help them with, arrangements and all sorts of things that, while it's, we don't look for a pat on the back for, it's a very good thing for the rest of the staff to see that we're going to be there when times get tough.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's rewarding in itself as well, because you seem like you're a people person. You seem like you want to get out there and be amongst your, I guess, your customers and your employees. But I get that's something you learned really early on when you're a police officer back when you were just starting out. But do you have, with your business partners, there's 3 of you, do you find that you all have your different assets and you sort of try and stay out of each other's position in the company, or do you sort of overlap a lot? Because it's always interesting to find that out.
It really is. We stick to our strengths. We really do. I mean, like I said, Adrian with his numbers and legalities of things, that's his strength. While all 3 of them, we understand them, but not to the degree he does. And then Clayton is, I've got 2 partners who, and even myself, it's not just about the money. We enjoy what we do. Clayton especially, he is the most, couldn't care less about money. He just loves to create. He loves to, here guys, we've got this site, let's go and do this, let's go and do that. He loves it, and he is non-stop 24/7. 24/7 he's going. He loves nothing more than rocking up at a venue at 10 o'clock at night when they're nearly closed and helping the staff close.
Yeah.
Well, I can say that's probably not me.
Yeah.
But in saying that, we have our own strengths. And it may overlap, but we never question each other's decisions. We meet probably every week. The 3 of us get together, if not face-to-face, Zoom, or we're talking, so those things it's never an issue for us now.
Yeah. And what do you find is the ultimate goal for yourself and your company? Because starting out really small, now you've got 16 venues, you've got like obviously more successes as you're going along. What has always been, and what is the ultimate goal for you?
It's funny. Some may say they call that an exit strategy. Do we have an exit strategy? We talk about it, the boys and I. Do we have a succession plan? Adrian's got children. I've got children. Clayton's got children. Clayton's son has just finished. He's got 2 sons. One's just finished school, and one is I think he's in year 11. Adrian's got 2 daughters. One of them is in year 11, the eldest one. I've got, obviously Grace and James. James is working in the business at the moment. So we haven't really decided what our exit plan is, and it's something that we've spoken about planning, but we really haven't sat down and pulled out the whiteboard and done a big planning session for it, because we're busy, and we sort of say, we're going to get to that. But the kids are getting older, and if they want to follow in our steps, which we think they may do, I think it'd be a great thing.
Yeah. So it's sort of, I guess, from what I'm understanding, it's kind of like creating some sort of like generational wealth where you can sort of pass it on through generation and generation, hopefully. And if that's what your kids want to do, because as you said, it's like an exit strategy. It's like a goal is like an ending of things. But at the same time, you've got to want to achieve something, because what's the point of having 1 venue and then wanting to get 2? Like, there has to be a goal, and on each step of that process, I know it's fun and it's exciting, but there has to be sort of those strategic goals in place so you can aim for that next venue, or you can aim for that next thing that you want to achieve.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And throughout the years, we've had probably 3 opportunities where other companies have come to us and said, well, boys, we'll buy you out. You know, we probably, the last one was a couple of years back where we were heavily in negotiation with a private equity company. But at the end of the day, we didn't feel 100% comfortable with the deal. But since that negotiation with the private equity company, we sort of thought, okay, well, we do want to expand, but we want to be more quality than quantity. I mean, you know, and we're probably looking for more what we like to call hero type venues now. We're looking for things that are a little bit more bespoke. The beach houses we've got are fantastic, and we could open 1,000 of them if we wanted to all over the country. But we'd have to franchise them if we did. And I'm not a massive fan of franchising.
Yeah.
And not because you don't make money, you really do. But the delicatessen which we had was a franchise, and you work really hard and you send away a lot of money to a company that doesn't do a great deal for you. And the franchising model, I'm not a great fan of, because usually it's just people buying themselves a job. Yeah. And I don't want to get in that situation where we're having to deal with mums and dads who are doing it really tough. So, you know, I think, like I said, we're really probably focused on the next bespoke venue, something that's amazing. We also, I mean, currently we're doing a new pub at the moment, which an opportunity that came to us in a very strange way. And those sort of big venues we really like. And I think we're sort of more directed that way. I mean, as you know, we've got some high-end restaurants. Well, we love them as well. We think that that's a great way. If we could find certain spots for those, they could go over throughout the country, Sydney, Melbourne. Yeah. But they're a one-off. They're not a cookie cutter, put them everywhere.
Yeah.
But that's sort of the plan.
Yeah, because you've got, obviously, your beach house bar and grills are your biggest sort of, I guess, asset in a way. That's the most amount of venues you've got in those. And then you've got 4 restaurants, Madame Wu in Brisbane and Sydney. That says opening 2019, so I assume it's open already. And then you got Chew the Fat and Casa Chivo.
Yep.
Chivo. I knew I was going to be a bit off, but how would you find the difference between, like, say, a beach house bar and grill and a high-end restaurant? Is there any different in process, or is it all kind of the same?
Fundamentals are the same, but the actual logistics are very different. I mean, you know, the kitchen at Madame Wu is a high-end, produce everything from the ground up. So everything that's made at Madame Wu is, you know, they have to create it. Chips that come into Beach House are frozen and ready to be fried.
Yeah.
You know, so the difference couldn't be further apart. So the people there are important. You know, like the head chef of Madame Wu and Chew the Fat, which are our 2 Asian offerings. He's the executive chef for both of those venues. And the man who runs the front of house, or maitre d', if you want to call him for want of a better word, he runs the front of house staff for both those venues, Chew the Fat and Madame Wu. Now, these 2 gentlemen are extremely important to us, and I'll let you in a little secret. We sold them equity into those businesses. So they both now own a percentage of that business. Yeah. And why do we do that? Because they are extremely important to us. I can replace beach house chefs pretty easily. You know, I mean, because it's a set menu and it's really, you know, steak sandwiches and quite an easy sort of menu. I can't replace these guys easily.
Yeah.
So to ward off poachers and to ward off them going and doing their own thing, it's better to have them on our side than on the other side.
Yeah,
so we began to finance them into it many years ago, and now they're both fully fledged partners of those businesses, and we treat them as such.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. I didn't obviously know that you did that. And then you've got hotels as well. What is the difference between, like, say, like the pub setups? Are you managing the rooms in these pubs, or are they just standard pubs?
So they're standard pubs, but we do have 2 of the pubs have got accommodation attached to them. Yeah. But obviously the pubs are, you know, they're multi-income producing. I mean, food, beverage, and then TAB, Keno, and the big one, poker machines.
Yeah.
So obviously, they have different avenues, where a beach house is basically F&B, food and bev.
Yeah.
Hotels have got the gambling side of it.
Yeah.
And it's there's a reason Woolworths owns most of the pubs in Queensland.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of profit to be had
retail,
in the poker machines, by the sounds of things.
Gaming.
Yeah.
Gaming is extremely profitable and for businesses. Run well.
Yeah. And then on your other side, you have the bottle-os. So
they're attached to in Queensland, you can only have bottle shops if you own commercial hotels.
Okay.
The licenses are different in New South Wales and Victoria. You can open a freestanding bottle shop with the right approvals anywhere. In Queensland, you can only open a large big box like a Dan Murphy's if it's attached to the hotel.
Yeah.
And then each hotel is allowed to have 3 bottle shops within a 10K radius of the hotel. And that's the limit. And those bottle shops can only be 150 square meters in size.
Yeah.
But a big box Dan Murphy's can be as big as they can possibly make it.
Yeah, right. And then, so you've got, I guess, you're a licensed sport club here too. I think you bought the kayaking facility up in the Sunshine Coast. It's called the Sunshine Coast Community and Sporting Club. Yeah. Now, how did that sort of come about? Because you've got bar and grills, like pubs. I guess you're all in like the food and beverage, and then you've got a sporting facility. Like, was that just an opportunity that presented itself?
It really was. I mean, there was land by the Kawana Lake there where they do the, kayaking and open water swimming, and the council up there put it out for tender. And we looked at the land, and Adrian Clayton and I thought this is an opportunity, and it was obviously a little bit of land banking. It wasn't an opportunity when we were going to buy it. It was going to be an opportunity down the line.
Yeah.
So we purchased the property with some conditions that we could get the approvals for what we wanted on that land. So we were buying it off council, but then we had to go back to council to get the approvals, because unless you can get the approvals for what you want to do, the land is not worth it. And over a 6-year period it took us, we got the approvals, and now we have we've built a sporting complex there called the Sports Hub. So we've got I think we've got 16 tenants there, one of the biggest gyms in, really high-end gyms in Australia, and then surrounded by chiropractors, physiotherapists, knee joint doctors, and a very medical style centre. And then we've built this accommodation by there as well. So we've got 80 odd rooms there. So, but they're sporting accommodation. So clubs, like we've had Melbourne Storm stay there. We've had the Canberra Raiders. We've had the Essendon football team. The stadium, the football stadium of the Sunshine Coast is 100 yards away. The Kawana swimming pool, Olympic style pool, is another 100 yards away. Obviously you've got the lake, and then the beach is 5 minutes away.
Yeah.
So it's an opportunity, and then right in the middle, we're going to put a sports club there, non-for-profit. But Raw Group will run it, but it's a non-for-profit. So it really is a bit of giving back, especially on the Sunshine Coast. So that's another little side thing.
Yeah, there's so much going on, I guess. And I guess it's exciting when you've got different sort of facets of your business that you can sort of really enjoy. And I know you like sport a lot, so it's probably something exciting because you've been involved in sporting clubs and rugby league, rugby union your whole life. So I think it's pretty cool. Now, we've spoken about your employees, your business. I wanted to learn a little bit about marketing for these businesses. Like, how much heavy focus do you put into marketing when you're opening a venue or you're trying to attract customers? How much focus are you sort of spending on that when you're opening things up, and how do you do it?
Well, it's funny, from what we started 20 odd years ago, marketing, which was non-social media, to what it is today, we couldn't be at further ends of the spectrum. So marketing now is all about, obviously, you need to have a launch. You need to get your name out there. You need to try and get some press, and be that TV, radio, newspaper isn't as important as it used to be, but it's still relevant. And then it's the social media side of things: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. These are the avenues that really, I mean, even TikTok now is becoming a thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, we have to keep up with all these things. And I have 2 people in the office now, marketing, but one girl is just, her sole job is social media. That's all she does. So her job is to reply to all our comments, which I can tell you is a job and a half. Good and bad. We reply to all of them. And
just with my little things that I do.
We have disappointed people. I mean, it's the industry we're in. And then it's about posting and building our database, and then creating promotions that very much appeal to the market we're trying to attach. For example, the Madam Woo market is vastly different to the Beach House market.
Yeah.
So the way we would present our marketing and our promotions, for example, Madam Woo doesn't do promotions not because we're being snobs, but it's just that we're trying to protect the brand.
Yeah.
So by protecting the brand, it's not somewhere where we discount.
Yeah.
But at Beach House, we will discount. You get the app, you go on a certain night, you can have 2 for 1, or there are percentages that comes off for members who have come back over a certain time, and all these sort of things, the different angles of trying to build your database and get returning customers.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing, because I've only just started to learn a little bit more about marketing and sort of pushing yourself. Like, even though I've done it indirectly through sport, but now I've got a few little different business interests, and trying to push those, you don't really realize how much you're kind of marketing for yourself as an athlete, and then you realize, okay, well, how do I do that for a business? So that's why I find that question always very interesting. But I guess we spoke a lot about your successes and gradually building and growth and all that type of stuff. Is there any point throughout the business journey where you went, oh, this is too hard, this is too much? Or like, was there a really bad deal that went down? You're like, oh, okay, this is really challenging time.
I don't know about if there's ever a time where we said, this is too hard, I'm out, but we definitely have had our failures.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had nothing major. Your failures are worse in the beginning, because that's where you need to protect cash flow, and you're starting off and all that. That's the hardest part. We've had some failures, but probably had them at the other end of the time. So we were able to absorb them quite easily. Easily. We were able to absorb them, nothing, it's not beer and Skittles every week, I can tell you. Hence, when I get the numbers, some of the venues, some weeks, they do not make money, they lose money. But over a 52-week year, that's what you got to look at. And you got to look for trends, if there are certain trends. It's a bit like social media and marketing. My girls in the office, they look for trends. If, for example, if there is a certain dish at a certain venue that is coming up, there's a problem. Well, we go, well, hang on a second. What's going on with the spaghetti carbonara? We need to go and check out. There's a problem. Are we not using the right ingredients, or have we deviated from the recipe? So those sort of things. So, yeah, I mean, failures teach you more than your successes every time. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that comes with most things in life. I've always found that when I've failed in a race, I've learned the most from it, because I'm like, okay, so what did I do wrong and how do I do better? And I always come back stronger from it. So that's always been one of my things. But yeah, getting into a few little bit different business ventures now, there's always a lot of failures, especially at the beginning. So you just got to gradually learn, pick yourself up, and then get going.
That you learn nothing from getting the question right.
Yeah.
So if you get it right, you already know something. It's when you get it wrong and they tell you the right answer, you actually learn something.
Yeah. And we'll just gradually start to wrap it up here. But what's your favorite venue? Is there one?
Oh, that's like saying which is my favorite child. That is a race, by the way. No. You know what? I don't really know if I've got a favorite, but I think some of the suburban beach houses I really like. We've got one at Springfield and one at Browns Plains, which are really probably a bit on the the socio-economic scale, a bit on the lower end. and the staff that work there are mainly locals, so they live in the area. And I really enjoy going out to those because those kids and the people who run them, they really love those venues, and I love to see their enthusiasm. I mean, it would be easy to say Madam Woo because it's all fancy and all that, but I love to go to the beach houses and talk to the, as I like to call them, the real people.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's pretty cool to hear. And I guess going forward, is there anything that you've got in the works that you can sort of detail, or is that you're just always looking for opportunities? Is that sort of like your goal at the moment?
Yeah, look, I think you mentioned there Madam Woo in Sydney. Well, actually, we haven't opened Madam Woo in Sydney because the building wasn't ready and COVID hit. So we've said to the landlord, look, until the international, because the site we have is at Circular Quay, which is probably the greatest tourism area of, Sydney Opera House, the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Nothing becomes more touristy than that.
Yeah.
We basically said to the landlord, look, until we get some clarity on international travel, we'll just hold off. No, look, I'm always interested in what we're currently doing because we look at probably 1,000 things and maybe do one.
Yeah.
But opportunities present, and we move quickly if we like it, and discard it if we don't. But the beauty of not knowing is the fun bit.
And what do you, obviously you base your decision on numbers and legalities and all that sort of stuff, but is there ever a bit of like a gut feeling you're like, this is going to work?
Oh, no, for sure. There were a couple of them. I mean, even when we first walked to the site at Madam Woo, and my brother instantly fell in love with it, and Clayton looked at me and I looked at him and he said, because we'd been in Sydney and we'd been to Mr. Wong's. Have you been to? It's a restaurant in Sydney, very famous. And we'd said, gee, we need something like this in Brisbane. Now, Madam Woo was a much smaller version of Mr. Wong's. But yeah, the site, we sort of scratched our heads because it was up at quite a lot of stairs, and stairs are a bit of a hurdle for people, and it was a little secluded. You really had to look for it. But the actual, it looks across the river, so it had its advantages. And Adrian was adamant that this was going to work, and I was thinking, I don't know about this one.
Yeah.
And it turns out he was incredibly right, and I was incredibly wrong.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's good, I guess. I guess at least one of you were right, and then not all of you were wrong.
Correct.
And I guess you mentioned about with COVID, how challenging was that for your business? And I probably should have brought up earlier in the piece, but I guess having lots of venues and having lockdowns and these shutdowns, and how hard was that as a pub and restaurant owner when you can't have people through your venues, and how did you absorb that issue?
Oh, look, that was, for everybody, extremely challenging. I mean, we're a food venue, and we sell things that are perishable, so obviously it all had to go, and there was a certain cost in that. I will say though, but things like our alcohol in kegs and our things like from Coca-Cola, these suppliers were incredibly generous for us, took back product, gave us credits for things. They were fantastic. Look, it's hard, and to close these venues down properly, this is not a turn the switch off and walk out. Yeah. You have to strip all those fridges, and the only thing you can really use is the freezer. You can keep your frozen food, but everything else has to go because you can't keep them in cold rooms for months on end. So, it's a huge amount of work, and it was difficult, but we were all in it. So it wasn't like it was just us. So we just had to get in and do it. The hardest thing for me through COVID, we have a lot of internationals working at different venues, was the fact that they didn't receive anything from the government. And I get that was, it was probably a little bit too much to ask for people who aren't Australians to receive benefits. But that was tough. So we had to spend a lot of time food parcels and helping people out and doing things just to keep some of these people going. Yeah. So that was the really challenging bit. I mean, JobKeeper came in and gave us the ability to look after a lot of our staff, a lot of staff. And I'm singing the same chorus as every other businessman. Without JobKeeper, it could have been devastation across the board.
Yeah, well, that's I guess good to hear.
Yeah, so we survived and we learned a bit, and we're still here.
Well, that's great to hear, mate, and I wish you all the successes going forward as well. So, and I thank you so much for your time today. It's obviously been great to learn about your journey throughout, I guess, the police and sport, and then into your business career.
It's been a pleasure, Boothie. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks, mate. And just to everybody out there who has been watching the BOOTHCAST, thank you so much for watching. If you want to check these out, please head to Michael Booth on Facebook and check out the BOOTHCAST videos. And if you want to listen, Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast channels, they'll be there. So thanks again, and I'll see you guys next time.